Last week I came across a story in AlexandriaLivingMagazine.com that talked about the median home prices will keep rising but slower. So this is a prediction that was put out by the Center for Regional Analysis at George Mason University and the Northern Virginia Association of Realtors.
So what we've seen over the last, 18 months is that prices have been increasing at a pretty steady clip. And that's happened across the entire Northern Virginia region. And what we're expecting, or what they're forecasting, is that we're going to continue to see home prices rise for the remainder of the year, just a little bit slower than it has been over the recent past.
Yeah, so they say in this article that single-family homes in Arlington are forecast to increase an average of 16.4% year over year. Fairfax County is going to be 8.6% and 7.4% in Alexandria, or the city of Alexandria.
Now, townhome prices are also going to increase, although at a lower percentage increase year over year. From July to December 2021, they expect townhomes to increase about 6.8% in Fairfax, 3.5% in Alexandria, and 2.4% in Arlington.
NVAR also forecast that for Fairfax County, which is our largest jurisdiction in the Northern Virginia area, that they'll only have 400 active listings of single-family homes in December, which is down from 2,674 homes in June of 2015. Now, I just want to say I don't understand this part of the article, because we always have less listings in December, but that's why we want to have this conversation with you about these topics, because if you're just a consumer looking at this content, you may think, oh my God, 400 from 2,600 to 400. Oh my goodness.
But also they're comparing June to December, which are just two seasons you wouldn't even compare, because in June, you're in the height of the market.
Yes.
That's one of the busiest times of year in the market. And then December, of course, the holidays, things naturally slow. Now, that's not to say they slow from 2,500 to 400. That is a considerable dip, but still.
Yes.
I think it's a bit alarmist the way it's phrased.
Well, they got to sell some ads, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Also, I thought what was interesting in this article is, listen to this. This is a verbatim quote. Of course, this could all change. There you go. See, these forecasts are really just to drum up new articles. But if you're in the market, or if you're thinking about making a transition in the winter months, right? I always recommend for clients to buy homes in the winter months, because that is actually the time you can get the best deal, because there's the least number of clients or active buyers looking for properties. Also, a seller that sells in the wintertime is usually under some sort of duress. And what I mean by that is that they were not able to plan their sale at the normal sale time, right? So if you think about it, most homes come on the market in the spring time. And if a homeowner comes on the market in the late fall, early winter, or even the dead of winter, something has happened, right?
Well, yeah, why wouldn't they just wait for the spring market, wait another 3 months? That's a good point. I will say one thing I found interesting from this article is they mentioned that, and if you're paying attention to the market, you've probably seen that things have slowed down a little bit, and not a lot, just a little bit. Rather than homes going under contract in 4 days, maybe it's taken 8. But they mentioned the fact that this could be tied to the pandemic and the fact that things are starting to open back up again. And maybe some people are traveling, everyone's been cooped up in their homes for the last year and some change. And so since they finally had that opportunity to get back out into the world, people are vacationing, they're moving around more, like physically moving around. I don't mean moving from home to home. I mean, they're actually going out on vacation. And so that could be why we're seeing a little bit less activity, is that people are taking advantage of the fact that they can actually go out now and get that done before we return to almost a regular schedule with, schools across the country opening back up, which means that if you do want to travel and you have a family, now is the time to do so before the school year begins.
Yes. In a normal market, without a pandemic, of course, although we're about to go into this whole Delta variant thing. So
I think we're already there.
Right.
We're not going into it. We're already there.
What is normal these days? Anyway, so in a traditional market, traditional non-pandemic, I guess we got to start calling it a non-pandemic market, usually people take vacations in the summertime, and so the housing market has a slight slowdown as we move from summer to the fall season, right? So right before the kids go back to school, people are not looking at houses because they're not even in the area. And that's just what we're kind of experiencing now. The only challenge is that right now we don't really have any evidence of what happens if we're in a pandemic. People now are able to go to start somewhat traveling is the slowdown, attributed to just a normal course of the market, or is this because pent up demand, people have already purchased, yada, yada, yada. So these are things that we're all learning as we go, which is again, another reason why we want to start this video series for you all, to kind of talk about some of these news articles and to deflate some of the anxiety that some of these articles are trying to build up. So next up on our list, on our conversation today, is the census data has been released, right? So you've probably seen a lot of news articles about the census reports, about the fact that these trends that are coming up, and it makes sense because the census was taken, last year?
Yeah.
Sometime. And so now we have that data available to us. There's an article Crystal's going to talk to us about from the Washington Business Journal.
Oh yeah. So overall, Northern Virginia is part of the greater Washington area. So that's going to be, parts of Maryland, primarily like Montgomery County, PG County, all of Washington, D.C., and then Northern Virginia. And so the greater Washington area actually saw a population increase of 13% over the last 10 years. And so what does that mean for us? That means around 735,000 new residents in the entire area. Specifically to Northern Virginia, in Loudoun, they actually had the largest increase, and Fairfax County had the smallest.
So Loudoun has the most opportunity for growth in our entire region, as far as like Northern Virginia is concerned, or not Northern Virginia, but just the greater Washington region. That's how they describe this area, because A, Loudoun has great public schools. B, Loudoun has land. So that means that Loudoun has undeveloped raw land.
Which we don't have a lot of that here in Fairfax County.
Right. I mean, we practically have none of it because Fairfax County has really already been developed, right? Ever since the Pentagon was built, right? Fairfax County is kind of like a large subdivision that services the Pentagon and the Washington, D.C. businesses, right? And so once Tyson's Corner started to get developed, now we have a lot of the Herndon Reston area that's also fully developed. And now it just makes sense that Loudoun would have more people moving into it because there's more opportunity for people to move into that area. And we're going to see that trend moving forward, especially because I think Loudoun does a great job of making sure that their public schools have great ratings and they perform very well.
They do. They have higher ratings than Fairfax County public schools overall.
Right.
Although Fairfax County is home to a lot of the higher rated high schools in the state.
Right, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
So in addition to Loudoun and Fairfax County, Prince William County saw a 20% increase. Alexandria is right about 14%. And then Arlington is just under 15% for growth.
The Washington Post actually had an article about this as well. And there's a lovely map. I don't know if you get the newspaper. If you don't get the newspaper, you should subscribe, support the local journalists. And it said something that I want to bring out to y'all attention. It says that Fairfax County grew 6.3% in the last decade and has now become a majority non-white suburb. Its white population declined from 64 to 47% since 1990. I think that that's important to kind of talk about, because on our YouTube channel, we have a lot of people that reach out to us from different parts of the country, and a lot of the times they are looking for a more diverse community. Absolutely.
It's something that we hear almost every time someone calls us. We hear it very frequently. Questions about diversity numbers, how diverse are the schools, the neighborhoods. It's actually one of the things we love about where we live in Fairfax County is the diversity of this area. And as you can see from the data from the census, it's continuing to grow in that direction and becoming more and more diverse.
Yes. And so I will say though, the Fairfax County or Northern Virginia is kind of divided as far as, I would say it's broken up by income. And so as you get into the higher income areas of the region, there's less diversity.
That's true.
No doubt.
That's true.
There's also a positive correlation between lack of diversity and the rating of the schools. So I think that what a lot of people are concerned about is they're looking for great public schools. They notice that in their research, their preliminary research, that the public schools seem like the ones that have the highest rating have less diversity, and there is a concern for that. And as there should be, right?
Well, I challenge that and say that despite the fact that those schools may have the higher ratings, graduation rate in Fairfax County is 84% across the board. So you're talking about even in our lowest rated schools in Fairfax County, we're still besting national averages. So I do understand that concern, but I think one of the things that we talked about when we moved here, or even when we considered leaving this area, we talked about it's all relative. If you come from an area that has poor school systems, then everything in Fairfax County may seem like a good idea. Whereas if you are coming from, A+ school or whatever, then going to a 90, we always said, we feel like the school our kids go to is like a 91. And so it's a pretty good school. Are we willing to trade off some other things, one of those things being diversity, in order to get to a 96?
Right.
And for us, it's come down to we'll keep our 91 because we do love the diversity of the area we live in. And again, we're kind of in one of those middle of the pack school zones. And we've never had any gripes with the schools at all. We actually are quite fond of them.
Right. And just to kind of bring more clarity to this conversation, we do not put much weight into the school system, right? So we do not weigh our children's performance in life based on the public school they go to. So
we think it's more of their kind of like a work-home balance where they're getting enough at home and the school supplements what they're getting at home, not vice versa.
But for individuals who are coming from, and I understand that if you're coming from an area where there's only like good schools or great schools in one part of a region, you're concerned about, school placement, whether or not your kid is going to have a great experience. But overall, Fairfax County, the Loudoun area, Arlington, parts of Arlington as well, they just have really good public schools, so you don't really have to worry about, that's not necessarily an issue.
The ratings are pretty fair across the board. We have great schools, we have good schools. It's hard pressed to find ones that are rated poorly.
Excellent. So the next topic we'll cover is something that's really blowing up on most of the social media channels.
Yeah, it's all over our local Patch and Nextdoor
and on
sites.
Facebook too.
And on Facebook too.
Facebook groups.
Everyone is talking about that, talking about this right now.
Yes, it's the car tax bill, right? So we got our car tax bill
over the weekend. Our bill came in
over the weekend, and it is higher, right? Usually in this area, because if you have a used car, so I have an Acura 2011 Acura MDX, so that means that because of depreciation and because the value of my vehicle is decreasing, then usually my vehicle tax is decreasing at a steady clip. Well, this year, that was not the case. That was not the case at all. The car tax bill for most residents of Fairfax County specifically were higher, right?
Yes.
And it caught some people off guard.
It did. And I just want to say before we say that it caught you off guard, it was probably about $25 higher.
Right.
Not a huge difference, but some people track these things.
Yeah.
And the people that do noticed that their bill was higher.
Exactly. And it was really tied to, the local government didn't increase the tax. It's really tied to the value of our vehicles, used vehicles that have increased. And that is really due in part because of the fact that the pandemic has caused supply chain issues with the microchips that go into the new vehicles. So there's less new vehicles. And so people who would have purchased a vehicle are buying used vehicles, and now used vehicles are more expensive.
That's true. Well, also it's because there's a decreased supply in used vehicles because many people who would have purchased new vehicles have not traded their vehicle in.
Exactly.
So many people would have decided to trade in their vehicle to upgrade. And because there are fewer new vehicles available, those people held on to their cars instead of trading up, which then led to a shortage in used cars available. And that's actually across the country. Overall, nationwide, there has been a 32% increase in the cost of used vehicles. And in Fairfax County, it's actually just a little bit higher at 33. Not Fairfax County. In Virginia, is actually a little bit higher at 33.8%. And just to give you an idea of how much that is, you're going to pay roughly $7,500 more this year for a used car than you would have last year. And so we say all that to say that the Blue Book value of the used cars have gone up, and your car tax are determined by your car's Blue Book value.
If you're one of those individuals who feels like you've been wronged by this, you can dispute your assessment, right? So we'll post a link in the description of this video to the place on the Fairfax County website that you can dispute your assessment. But for the most part, from what I've heard in some of the social media threads, is that it's very challenging to dispute the assessment, and usually it's due to like a hardship. So if you're not able to support a hardship or to verify your hardship, then you may just need to pay up.
And again, it's averaging about $25 per vehicle. So keep that in mind and how much you value your time before going on that excursion.
I'm actually a big proponent of used vehicles in general. I feel like sometimes people cycle through vehicles too quickly. So I'm happy to see this. This is causing people to second guess whether or not they need new cars. Even though, we're in the real estate space, so we're constantly selling people houses and whatnot. I like for people to pay off their vehicles so then they could take that money that they would have paid on their vehicles to either move that money to their kids' college fund or move that money to their savings account. So that's a huge win in my book.
There's this thing I was reading in Alexandria Living about this new co-living initiative. So it's interesting. I'd actually never heard of this before. So there is a proposal to allow these co-living, essentially like rooming or boarding houses, where either companies or individual owners will rent out their properties with individual leases for each bedroom. Essentially kind of almost like a hostel where you rent a room and you have access to the common area, including the kitchens, but you just rent that one room. And so they're called SROs, or single room occupancy. And it's causing a bit of uproar in Alexandria, or the city of Alexandria. Many residents are opposed to this idea. Apparently this was actually something that was done in the DC metro area in like the 70s and 80s. And it led to like some blight and flop houses. And so some residents are concerned that this could cause some problems for them, whether regarding their property value or just the overall safety and even cleanliness of their neighborhoods.
That makes sense. I mean, there's always going to be, I guess, challenges to alternate ways of living, right? Or alternate home types or property types that are going to be available. We saw similar pushback to the Airbnb or vacation rentals as they moved into the market. I just think that this is probably going to be something that is going to be hard to challenge because Northern Virginia in general is becoming more and more expensive. And as this area becomes more and more expensive, we have to start to think about the fact that no one wants affordable housing in their community. So there's always pushback against affordable housing, but like who's going to work at the local Walmart, right? Like who's going to work at the local grocery stores or the areas, the services that are lower income, right?
Well, I think that also this isn't just for low income wage earners. This is also for young professionals, are people who are moving into the area who may in other areas make what's considered a good living, but here it's not necessarily enough to live on their own.
Right.
So this may be an opportunity for some young professionals to live closer into the city, reduce their commute. The corporations that are thinking about this are trying to push it as some affordable housing initiative.
Right.
So I guess, we'll see how things turn out. There has been some success in Atlanta with a corporation called Pad Split. So they've been doing it for a little while in Atlanta, although they are facing some lawsuits. And another company out of California called Hub House, they were going strong for a little while, but they have since folded because they couldn't make the numbers work. So it'll be interesting to see how things go. The city council does have a meeting scheduled for September 5th. For those interested, if you are a resident of the city of Alexandria and you want your input heard, you can definitely check that out.
All right, so the next story we're covering is another local topic that is setting the social media ablaze.
It is.
It is.
And people's legs and arms.
That's true. It's the oak mites. Oak mites are biting the hell out of people right now and leaving large bruises that is causing people to go to social media and find out like what exactly is going on.
So a couple months ago, or really maybe just a month and a half ago, we had, the cicada infestation. We had cicadas everywhere. You could hear the buzzing for weeks on end. It was just a constant buzz. Sound like bees in your ear, just day and night. And finally, early July, that was over. We thought we were done with the cicadas. For the next 17 years, we wouldn't have to see them or hear about them. A few reminders when you see the dead branches on the trees here and there from all the cicadas laying their eggs. Well, apparently, oak mites like cicada larvae.
That's true.
And we didn't know that because we have not had cicadas in 17 years. But now we have oak mites, or at least we believe we have oak mites, because the word around town is that the oak mites are biting everyone. You should stay away from the parks and the trails right now because there are oak mites. But if you visit your local urgent care or doctor, they'll probably tell you they're not sure what the bites are from because there's actually not a lot of research and there's no conclusive evidence that they are oak mites. But what the neighbors are saying, what's being said on Facebook and at the local parks, is to watch out for oak mites.
Right. Now, I will say we're not promoting that you stop visiting the trails or the parks, but there's some precautions that you can take on your end to either minimize these bites, because the oak mites they're microscopic, and so they really travel through the wind, or they just drop from the trees, right? So that's why if you are going to go into trails, which we love the trails, or if you are going to go to the park, you want to take some precautions. And so in this article from Arlington Now, it says these are some precautions they give. Use an effective repellent such as DEET or others. Ensure door and window screens are intact. Be more vigilant at dawn and dusk when mosquitoes are most active. Wear long sleeves, pants, and socks while outdoors when possible. Drain all sources of standing water to prevent mosquitoes from breeding. And another website, I don't recall which one it was, but they also recommend that if you do go to a trail, it takes maybe a couple hours for the oak mites to bite. So if you did go to a trail, to jump in the shower, wash yourself off, right? Put your clothes in the dirty clothes or the hamper, and that should minimize the potential risk, right?
Okay. I think that's a much better idea than wearing long sleeve pants and socks, because it's been on average around 95 degrees over the last week.
Right.
So I'm going to go with shower immediately over putting on long sleeves.
Exactly. All right. So now we have our Amazon segment here. We have a couple articles we want to talk about that pertain to Amazon. Amazon is a big deal in Northern Virginia, as you all may know it. They are here to stay. They are increasing their footing in the area, and we have a couple clients. We just closed on a client that's working for Amazon. We have another client that's moving here from Amazon, so we should just continue to see them in the news. And we might as well just kind of talk about, like, how does this affect real estate, or just keep you up to date with Amazon in general. So JBG Smith, which is one of the largest developers in that National Landing Crystal City area, they recently had an article in the Business Journal, Washington Business Journal, that just talks about how, because Amazon is in the area and they know that Amazon has signed these long-term leases, they could actually start to speed up development throughout that National Landing area. They do mention that they're speeding up development outside of the region as well, but Amazon has already only hired about 1,000 to 1,500 people for their corporate headquarters, HQ2. So I don't see them really speeding up too much development outside of the Crystal City area until we get further past, or once the pandemic is over, right? Because my client who's moved to the area, they were supposed to go back to work, or Amazon was telling their employees that they had to start 2 days in the office in September. They just moved that to January of 2022. Until we get a firm date on when Amazon is going to tell its employees that they have to come to the office, we probably are going to see the real estate development that's currently going on. We're going to see that come to completion or further itself, but we may not see additional projects. You saw an interesting story about the mocktails and the rebranding effort that they're going through.
Yeah, so, Abraham mentioned National Landing, which is essentially what they're calling as a catch-all for these three areas that I guess will primarily serve that area, the Amazon HQ2 area. So that would be Pentagon City, Crystal City, and also Potomac Yard in Alexandria. The first two places are in Arlington, excuse me. And so they're trying to, I guess, make it like this all-inclusive area where you kind of live, work, and play in which I guess you see pretty much everywhere. A lot of people tend to want to stay in one centralized location. So they have this idea of becoming an 18-hour neighborhood, which is where you spend all of your waking hours in this one place. So maybe you work at HQ2 and you live in National Landing, and they're going to try to entice you to hang out there. So there's a lot more green space. That area used to be known for more of like, concrete high rises, and that was pretty much it. People went in there, they went there for work. They went back home. Their lives were outside of that immediate area. So in this effort to, I guess, liven it up a little bit, they're starting to have activities in that area. So there was one just last week called Summer House. So, there's a lot of grassy area. There's outside yoga, and there's, mocktails. Last week they had 2 alpacas. Yes, there were alpacas there. Yes. And so this is it. Essentially, they're trying to drive people into that area. And oddly enough, they want this to be organic, while at the same time it is being planned by the developers in the area, just to try and get more people to spend more of their day there.
Right. They're just trying to appeal to a better or
a different demographic.
Well, I think that I mean, if you think about it, the Northern Virginia region or Amazon is competing for talent. And if you're a talented individual, why would you choose this company, this location over another company if you have different options? And so
that's true. I mean, it's in the middle of the suburbs. I mean, essentially Northern Virginia is the suburbs of Washington, D.C. So they're trying to entice, I guess, a certain demographic into that area and try to change it, I guess, over time.
Yeah, I mean, they even said in the same article, I think this article came from
the Washington Post.
So it says that national landing, so the type of people that they're trying to get to the area are young techies, government contractors, retirees who have been around for a decade, right? So they're trying to get like a healthy mix of people, because Amazon's goal of hiring 27,000 people, you know, these big companies, they would like you to be at work for a long period of time, and they want to reduce the friction for which you get to work, right? And so if they can reduce your commute by housing everybody that works for them in and around the neighborhood, right, then you're more likely to go to work. And if you notice, they didn't say families.
Well, you know what I find interesting is they mentioned retirees, but every negative comment in the article, every negative quote was from an older resident, someone who either has already lived there, who is complaining about all the noise now,
right?
Because they're having all these outdoor concerts and other events, or people who live in the area who are concerned that they're going to be priced out soon.
Right.
Because even one couple in here who was younger, they mentioned that their rent went up $400 immediately after the announcement of HQ2. So I find it interesting that they say they're looking for, you know, this diverse mix, especially retirees, because it seems like the retirees are not excited about them.
I think that they're talking about retirees in the future. I think future retirees who have either higher incomes, because we see it ourselves that a lot of our clients, once they retire, they kind of move out of the area.
Absolutely.
Not immediately, but some of them move out of the area. They make plans to find a place that...
I mean, we had 3 just this summer. 3 retirees move out just recently.
That's true. But they're usually looking for a place that either has a lower property tax or lower property value, so then their retirement funds could stretch longer, right? And so in that Crystal City area, the National Landing area, those prices are going to steadily increase as Amazon builds out the rest of its presence, which means that there are going to be less and less retirees in that market. And
speaking of building out their presence, they just bought another 17 acres. Amazon just bought another 17 acres for another data center out in Loudoun.
Yes, I did see that.
And so, so they just did that. And they also are going to start working soon on another 17-acre property that they acquired last year. They're going to begin a demolition on those buildings in Springfield, Virginia, to work on putting up a couple of new office buildings there as well.
Amazon is continuing to grow. So I want to end on one positive note that Amazon has, right? Because we talked about all their growth and development. Now, we live in Kingstown. Amazon just put an Amazon Fresh in our neighborhood. We love it. Love that little...
We do love it.
Spot there. You get to drop your packages off. I believe they have a great selection of vegetables or fresh produce.
They do. And I love the self-checkout is unlike any self-checkout because you just put your stuff right in the basket.
Right.
So it's really convenient. So not mad at Amazon Fresh.
Yes. And
it's actually the first location. I think they're opening 4 more here in Virginia, but we have the first location here in our neighborhood.
That's correct. And also Amazon donated $1 million to Northern Virginia public schools. In addition to giving away school supplies, they're also giving away vouchers to high school students to buy school supplies on Amazon.com. And they will also be including food distribution, tutors, mentors, literacy events, and stuff like that. So good job, Amazon. It's great to see them really not only just build a large presence in the community, but they are also giving back at the same time.
Yes, and also I really appreciate in the article, so in addition to the $1 million, their employees actually packed the backpacks. They're working on delivery through this nonprofit that they work with. And so I actually really appreciate the fact that it wasn't just them throwing money at it, but also that their staff can actually sign up. And it's actually kind of like a team building thing for them where they actually get to meet. Everyone's been working virtually. So this was actually one of the few opportunities this year where they got to meet each other in person, was to do this community outreach.
Excellent. I think this is a great place to stop. My name is Abraham Walker.
I'm Crystal Walker.
And this is Where to Live in Northern Virginia. And this was just a little news update for you. If you like this type of content, please let us know in the comment section. Also, my phone number will magically appear right here along with my email address. If you need to get in touch with me, we'll be happy to speak to you about any of your real estate needs. There's also a perfect home questionnaire in the comment section. If you want immediate assistance, fill out that questionnaire and we will schedule a time to meet via Zoom online. That's it until next week. Peace.